Hello, and welcome to today's Here's to Your Health podcast. I'm Don Linsman, your host. My guest on the podcast today is Kelby Eck. Kelby is the Director of Emergency Services here at CCMH, and Kelby, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Don.
We're going to talk about National EMS Week here in just a minute, Emergency Medical Services Week, but before we do that, Kelby, I'd like you to just reintroduce yourself to our audience, give them a little bit of a flavor of your background and experience.
Yeah, Kelby Eck. I was raised in Kyron, Iowa, up here right in Crawford County. Graduated from Denison High School and joined up in the National Guard and served in the Army right out of the Denison Armory here for 6 years before I went on to go to school. Got my nursing degree. Was a critical care nurse for about 5 years, and then went on to the emergency side of things. I worked as an emergency room nurse, and then got acquainted with the EMS system, and then took the position here of the director of the emergency services, and really got involved in EMS and ER nursing.
And you know, this is the 50th anniversary for National EMS Week. The theme this year is honoring our past, forging our future. And I think it's a personal question, but what does being a part of EMS mean to you?
Being a part of EMS means that you're part of something greater than yourself. So the EMS, at its definition, is helping others. So you are always looking for a way to either volunteer your time or continue your education. You are moving forward in your abilities and in your passion to help someone else in their time of need.
What really drew you to EMS, Kelby?
Again, just the helping other people. You get to see folks at their absolute worst and be the foundation and the building blocks of building them back to what they once were or even better. It's an honor. It really is. It's very rewarding. It's exciting. It's something that once you begin that path, you never get off of it.
Every job or every field of endeavor has its own challenges, and I'm going to guess that EMS has lots of challenges today.
That it does.
Maybe just a couple, three things that you could think of that you could share with us today, the things that you think that EMS faces in terms of challenges.
So one of the biggest things that EMS faces as far as a challenge goes is recruitment. The population of folks that are involved in the EMS world they're aging. You know, it's the 50th anniversary, like you said, so a lot of the folks that started this are now beyond the age of retirement. They're handing it down to the next generation and then the next generation. But that next generation is fewer and farther between. Part of the reason, one of the other issues that it has is we don't have as much time as we used to back in the day. So finding time to help others or finding time to better yourselves, to have the ability to help others, is harder to do. So I would say, probably recruitment's the number one thing, is getting more people involved and then finding a way to make time in your life to help others.
Just from where I sit, looking at EMS from the outside, I think maybe one of the challenges that I see is EMS is being asked to do more now than they ever have
always
in the past.
Yep.
And I do think that it's not just a challenge from finding the people, but I think it's the challenge from the training aspect of this.
Mm-hmm. So we actually have some great partnerships with area colleges. We have WIT, we have Iowa Western, we have DMAC, all in the area that have great training programs. Fantastic EMTs, fantastic paramedics come out of those programs, but getting somebody down that path and to commit to that it's difficult, especially when you have bills to pay, you've got a family at home. If it's really something that you want to do, it's a tough start, but it's definitely something that we can help with as well.
I want to thank everybody for listening to our podcast today. It's the Here's to Your Health podcast. I'm Don Linsman, your host. Kelby Eck, the Director of Emergency Services, is my guest today, and we're talking about National EMS Week, which will be coming up here shortly in May. What about EMS provider wellness and mental health?
So EMS providers face, again, some of the worst scenarios that you can imagine coming up on vehicle accidents or people with medical emergencies, and often the people that are there to help forget to take care of themselves as well. And lately, the last 10 to 15 years, EMS has kind of shifted focus onto themselves again. So we have a lot of different support networks. Peer support is a huge one. There is a large community of EMS providers that's out there to talk to each other. They've been there, they've seen it, and they know how to get through it. So utilize those kind of resources. We also have some organized resources like critical incident stress management. programs that are put together with evidence-based practice on how to help EMS providers, how to help nurses in general, just people that have seen some pretty traumatic things, get through those instances and come out better on the other side.
One of the other things that we did touch on there just a little bit is the expanded role of EMS providers. And obviously there is more training, certifications, but there's also this anticipation, I think, in both the national and state healthcare circles, that eventually paramedics and EMS are just not going to be a part of emergency medicine, but will move into a more maybe proactive or reactive role just for regular citizens in the community, like we've talked about the community paramedic program.
Right.
Let's take just a moment to talk about that and what those implications are for EMS.
With this being the 50th anniversary of EMS Week, 50 years ago, if you were a part of EMS, you jumped on an ambulance when the 911 call went out and you took care of a patient. You never saw him again. You got him into an emergency room or whatever hospital it was. That is only the beginning of what EMS touches nowadays. So nowadays, EMS is not only integral. You have to go out and respond to those 911 calls. You have to be there in their time of need, but you're also assisting in the emergency rooms. You'll see emergency rooms across the nation staffed with paramedics, with EMTs, there to help you every step of the way through that. You'll see a lot of paramedics and EMTs working in urgent care facilities across the city. You'll see them in home health settings where they go out and visit you after your hospital stay. There's a huge role for paramedics, and it's only getting bigger. EMTs' roles are just as big. You can see them in clinics. You see them just about anywhere. It's just as much of an integral part of healthcare system in general as it is the 911 response used to be.
I think it has a lot to do with force multipliers.
Oh, yeah.
People are always being asked to do more with less, and I think hospitals are definitely in that boat. But you can do more with less as long as you fully utilize the staff that you have. So all of the things that you're talking about, this is about creating that force multiplier, not just within a hospital or a clinic, but within the community. And I think that really lends itself to a much greater influence that emergency medical services can have.
Right. So that force multiplier not only applies, like I said, to the hospital or to the 911 response agencies, but now we're getting out into some of the smaller towns, some of the volunteer agencies. Those forces are always growing. You're always getting more numbers out there. People are more involved. You see faces at parades. You see faces at community events. And that really kind of spurs people into thinking what they can do to help or what they can do to make things better.
My guest on the podcast today is Kelby Eck. Kelby is the Director of Emergency Services here at CCMH, and we thank you for joining us and listening to our Here's to Your Health podcast today. Kelby, what kind of words of encouragement would you give to EMS personnel?
I touched on it at the very beginning, but this is one of the most rewarding and honorable career paths you can go down. There's polls, there's surveys, every one of them you look at looks at EMS professionals as one of the most respected, one of the most honored career fields you can go down. So if you want something that's rewarding, EMS is definitely the way to go. There's a lot of work involved. Don't hesitate on that. You need to make sure your education is absolutely up to date. You need to make some instant decisions that could be, life-changing for some folks. But that's some of the adrenaline part of it. That's why some folks get into it in the first place. But at the end, when you know you've done everything you can and things turn out great, there's nothing more rewarding than that.
May is chock full of recognition days and weeks for healthcare. We've had Nurses Day, we've got Nurses Week, we're at Hospital Week, EMS Week coming up in a couple of weeks. Anything special planned for us to be able to recognize our EMS personnel?
We do. We have something planned on May 22nd from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. We're going to have our ambulance from Crawford County Hospital here up at the Hy-Vee parking lot. We're going to have a grill set up. We'll bring your kids out, bring your family out. You get a chance to shake some hands. You get a chance to take a look inside of the truck and see what these folks do for a living every day, day in and day out. And there'll also be flipping burgers, and you can grab a bite to eat while you're there. Say hi and thank you.
I think that's a really great event for a couple of different reasons. One is it takes some of the mystery out of emergency services for people. Most folks, including those my age, boomers, I have never been actually inside of an ambulance as a patient.
That's not a bad thing.
That's not a bad thing. I have seen ambulances, but I think for everyday run-of-the-mill garden variety people in Denison or Crawford County, you don't see that every day.
No.
But the other side of that is, if we ever hope to recruit more people into the service, we have to be able to show the community that there's, what it's like and what it's about and why it's a great sort of career to pursue.
You're right, we do. And us getting out there and doing more, showing our faces more, getting an opportunity to meet the folks that are going to come and respond to you if you ever have an emergency. Shake their hand and you realize that these are people just like you and you have every ability to do the same job that they do.
There are any number of EMS services that have had a lot of trouble recruiting people to come work for them. Thankfully, I don't think we're necessarily in that boat. But for folks who are listening today and have an interest in knowing more about EMS, how do they get involved in that? Really, especially for our outlying communities in Crawford County. There's always a need for more volunteers to help us with those kinds of things. If somebody wants to know more about EMS, especially paramedic or EMT, first responder, how do they get in touch with you to be able to ask those questions and you can provide them with some answers?
Yeah, I would love to talk to anybody that's got questions about it. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. So give me a call up here at the hospital at 265-2500. Just ask for Kelby. I'll take those phone calls any day. If you want to talk to somebody about volunteering your time at any of the smaller agencies and some of the smaller towns in the county, any of those volunteer agency members are more than happy to talk about it as well. Kyron, Dow City, Manila, all of those guys transport patients with their ambulance. Some of the smaller communities like Deloitte, Charter Oak, they have responders that show up and they lend a hand. They're the first ones on scene. They'll help recruit you and help put you in the right direction any day of the week. Nobody will turn you away.
Kelby, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate you having me.
My guest on the podcast today has been Kelby Eck. Kelby is the Director of Emergency Services here at CCMH. We're talking about National Emergency Services Week, which is coming up in a couple of weeks here in May. I'm Don Lintzman, your host for the Here's to Your Health podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Have a great day.